Ever wondered why two people can watch the same ad, hear the same speech, or see the same picture and walk away with completely different opinions? Think about this dress. You know, that viral debate a few years ago, is this blue or black or white or gold? Personally, I always see white and gold. But my wife always swears it's blue and black. What about you? Drop your thoughts in the comment. I'm genuinely curious to see how this plays out in terms of the numbers. Now, if we can't even agree on the color of a dress, even though we both agree that we are seeing the same dress, how can we possibly agree on other things like what a political leader is a best or a worst thing that ever happened to a country, or whether a product actually works as advertised? You'd think that given the same information, two people would reach the same conclusion. But we know that's not how things work. Now don't worry, this video isn't about settling any debates. Instead, I want to break down why we see things differently. It all comes down to something called selective perception. Because your perception is shaped by your world that you live in, and my perception is shaped by my world that I live in. No two people interpret or perceive things exactly the same way unless both the information and the world we live in is exactly the same. Now, before talking about selective perception, let's understand what perception is. Perception is our interpretation of reality. It is how we see things. So, reality and perception are two different things. Reality is how things exist independent of our perception, while perceptions are influenced by our internal and external factors. So while the dress is a specific color in reality, our perception of what the color is influenced by many internal and external factors. To learn more about perception specifically, please be sure to watch my other videos about perception. Now let's get back to selective perception, the topic at hand, and understand how it works. I will explain the concept by going over the steps of how selective perception is formed. Let's start with the first step, selective exposure. You can think of this step as we choose what we see step. If you don't know anything about Nepal's prime minister, you can't really have any perception about him, right? Is he a good leader or a bad leader? You don't know. What about this leader? Do you have any perception about him? Well, your perception about him will depend upon what news sources you expose yourself to. Selective exposure is all about choosing your information sources or sources of your stimuli. If I turn off the TV when something I don't like shows up, I am doing selective exposure. A lot of the time, whenever there is an ad on TV, I just skip channels. I choose not to expose myself to messages from many companies. Selective exposure means we choose what we want to see. For example, if you watch Fox News, you probably don't want MSNBC, and vice versa. If you're a Marvel fan, you probably click on MCU news but scroll past anything that is about DC. A sports fan might follow Nike on social media but not Adidas. I never read any news related to Apple products because I don't have any Apple products. We are always filtering what we expose ourselves to, so of course our perception of the world is selective. But keep in mind, all the four steps of selective perceptual process are largely unconscious in nature. Many of us are not consciously engaging in selective perception. You may not even realize that you are engaging in selective exposure. In marketing, it is the marketer's job to make sure that consumers are exposed to your marketing messages and communications. Now, before we move on to the next step of selective perception, let's watch this video. This video is from National Geographic show called Brain Games. The link to the video is also provided in the description. Let's expose ourselves to this video by watching it. Here, the objective is to count the number of jumps the participants that are wearing green make. For example, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4 and concentrate on the number of jumps from the green participants. How many did you count? 38? But then, did you notice what was happening in the background? Some of you might have noticed the giant chicken dancing and moving across the background. Good job, but let me ask the key question of this experiment. What color was the wall that was behind the stage? How many of you noticed that the background wall was changing its color the entire time? Well, if you missed it, don't worry, I did too. I even missed the chicken. Why? Because we have evolved to be focused on task at hand. There is so much information coming at us that we have to pay attention to what we think is important while ignoring the information that we think is not important. This process is called selective attention. The TV may be on, I may not be looking at it, the radio might be playing, but I may not be paying any attention to it. Or there are advertisements on my laptop continuously from online sources, but I'm not paying attention to it. I am being exposed to those informations, but I'm not paying attention to it. So I'm paying selective attention to the things that are of interest to me. And this is also happening consciously as well as subconsciously. An example, I generally do not notice the colors of the cars that I'm whizzing past, even though I'm exposed to the colors. But once I bought a green Toyota Camry, I started noticing green Toyota Camrys all over the place, something that I'd never noticed before. If I start thinking about buying an Apple Watch, I'm pretty sure I'll start noticing many Apple ads and people wearing Apple Watches all over the place. This is because we are really good at selectively paying attention to things that we think are important while not paying attention to things that we don't think are important. Similarly, when listening to speeches from political leaders that we like, we might only pay attention to things we agree with and do not pay a lot of attention to parts of the speech we disagree with. In summary, we selectively pay attention to things that we want to. As we stated earlier, most of the time people may not be aware that they are filtering out information. Our brain is very good at automatically focusing on certain details while ignoring others. This is why marketers put so much emphasis on attention. The AIDA model, if you remember it, and other communication models that you have learned about have as their first step grabbing the attention of the consumer. Because without attention, there is no communication and there is no perception. Now let's talk about the third step in this selective perceptual process, which is called the selective comprehension, where we interpret things through the lenses of our own belief. Now, if we are exposed to and also pay attention to something, how we understand it depends on what we already believe. Can you believe it? Let's do a quick test. Check out this clip from Brain Games. What is the ball doing here? You might say that the ball is rolling in the ground. Now a shadow is added to the video and we still see that the ball is rolling in the ground and nothing has changed. What do you think the ball is doing now? It seems the ball is flying in this case. And in this case, the ball seems to be bouncing. How is it possible? We saw that the movement of the ball itself has not changed at all in all of these three instances. It's doing the same thing every time. The only thing that has changed is the shadow. It is the movement of the shadow that tricks our perception of what is happening. Even though we clearly know the reality that the movement of the ball has not changed between the three situations that we have encountered. Why does this happen? Because our brains have a strong belief about how shadows work. This belief is so strong that it twists and distorts the information that is coming to our eyes and makes us believe that the ball is flying or the ball is bouncing. That's how powerful our beliefs are. They can literally distort reality. This is the same situation that happens with the color of the dress that we discussed earlier. The color of the dress depends upon how our brain interprets the lighting of the situation. You have a mental model that is entrenched, that is very strong. It can distort any information that comes to you to make it fit into your already existing mental models. Now apply this concept to politics and political discourse. A basic example might be a Trump supporter might hear America first and think patriotism, strength. Meanwhile, an opponent might hear the same America first phrase and think about isolationism and selfishness. Same speech, same message, two different interpretations based on their already established beliefs. It happens in marketing a lot, and marketers care about this a lot as well. When Apple launches a new iPhone, Apple fans sees it as an innovation, while skeptics sees it as a shameless money grab. Here's another example, Tide Pods. When they first came out, many people thought there is no way one tiny pod can replace a full cup of detergent. So even I resorted to putting in more than one pod into the washing machine, even though in reality it was as effective as they had advertised it to be. The small size of the pods distorted the reality of its effectiveness in the consumer's perception. Tide had to spend a lot of marketing money in creating marketing campaigns, and they ran many advertisements emphasizing the 3-in-1 benefits, 50% more cleaning power. They even had to bring in the Gronk to flex his muscles and tell people Tide Pod was strong. They had to work hard to shift the negative perception associated with Tide Pods relating to its size. Another example in marketing is associated with the price-quality relationship. People perceive cheap as low quality and expensive as high quality. So if you give the same food to people but they are priced differently, many will say that the higher priced food item tasted better than the lowest priced items. Now, as a marketer, you need to make sure you understand the beliefs and mental models and the biases that the consumers have. Understanding how the consumer's comprehension works and how they interpret your communication is very important for a marketer. Now, as with everything we discussed so far, the selective comprehension is also a largely unconscious process. It most often happens automatically without us being aware of it. Now, the fourth step of the selective perception process is selective retention. We remember what we already believe. Even if something makes it through all of those filters of exposure, of attention, and of comprehension, we will not remember everything. And guess what? We tend to remember things that align with what we already believe. For example, if I watch a Marvel and a DC commercial, I will probably remember the Marvel one way longer and in way more detail. Why? Because I already love Marvel. I will simply not retain the DC commercial in my memory because I am not as much interested. It happens with the news too. Someone who loves electric cars will remember an article about an electric car company's latest innovation, but forget a report on battery disposal problems. Think about the COVID pandemic. There was a lot of information about vaccines going around during that time. What do people remember? Well, pro-vaccine individuals tend to remember reports that showed how vaccines reduced hospitalization rates and deaths. Vaccine skeptics, on the other hand, most likely remember reports about side effects of the vaccine or incidents where a person, even though vaccinated, got sick or died. Even though people are exposed to the same information, they generally will selectively retain information that agrees with their beliefs. We hold on to what reinforces our beliefs and we forget what challenges our beliefs. So in summary, the selective perceptual process is the outcome of 4 steps. Selective exposure, we choose what information we are exposed to. Selective attention, we focus on what matters to us. Selective comprehension, we interpret things through our own beliefs. Selective retention, we remember what aligns with what we already think or believe. At every stage, we are filtering reality through our own experiences, beliefs, and biases. So, next time you find yourself in a heated debate, remember it's not just about facts, it's about perception. And perception is always selective. Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to tell me, was that dress blue and black or was it white and gold? Thanks for watching.